There's a new threat out there. It's crypto.
There's been far too much fraud.
If I was the government, I'd close it down.
You will own nothing and you'll be happy.
I think it's rat poison.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
GM fam, today is March 8th. It's the first day of the rest of our lives, and we are joined by a fantastic all-star crew. CVX-5, welcome to the first Llama Party since ETH Denver. How are you all doing today?
We're doing awesome.
Good.
Good to be here.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Coming through loud and clear.
Can we just talk about how top tier that Tetranode video is? That is quite possibly like, you know, we talked about the Yearn video a couple of weeks back, and we talked about a few other videos, but this is probably like the best of the best so far.
I mean, how many people out there are investing at a scale in memes? Like they've hired people to create high quality memes. Like Tetranode is a national treasure to DeFi.
I think at a certain point in crypto, if you've made it, you just kind of like commission memes and kick back and have fun, right? Like that's the ultimate flex.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Tetra is the culture. So like, I mean, these are like amazing. I mean, I think this is the best piece of content that we've seen in the past year from anything.
Yeah, I agree.
I think second best will be this Llama Party. So several of you were at ETH Denver. Did you all make it back without the POAP, the illness that's been going around?
No, I fell ill. I went down. Fallen soldier over here, just recovering.
But if nothing else, I'm very impressed with the swag.
Exactly.
I see the Convex shirt, Curve shirt. I'm wearing a Fractal shirt.
You gotta get the swag. There's high quality swag out there. Support the people that make it. Flex the protocols you have bags in.
Well, welcome, guys. It's great to have you here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, unfortunately, we can only get 3 of the 5 of the CVX-5, but you know, several of you have been on previous like Leviathan parties and such. Yeah, it's a multi-sig. It's better than most multi-sigs,
right?
I mean, most multi-sigs are like 1 or 2 of 5, so I think we're like smashing it there. But for those who for those who are unfamiliar with you all, could we just go around and give like a very brief like round of intro on your way to crypto? Well, let's start with Boz.
Sure. Yeah, brief introduction. I'm Boz. I'm one of the community members of the CVX-5 team. Most recently, I was the chief operating officer of Akash Network, which is in the AI GPU space, helped resurrect the company with Greg, introduced products and then built a team to the market, helped with a lot of listings. Most recently left to be full-time DeFi. And Jason and I were part of also Four Moons, which is a DeFi advisory firm. We advise hedge funds on their crypto strategy, primarily around DeFi. It's a thesis-driven team there, but we also run blockchain nodes, Canto, where we'll be a Genesis validator on Barrett Chain, and Altea, which is a major Deepin project that's flying under the radar. And we advise and invest primarily around DeFi.
Boz, you're like the contrarian rotator. Like AI is the narrative of 2024. And you were like, I'm gone, guys. I'm off the DeFi. I'm here to resurrect it.
We can talk about that like towards I have a thesis around like, between AI and DeFi. But we could touch probably on that maybe, sometime during the show later. It is a contrarian bet.
Nice. Cryptovestor, tell us a bit about your background, how you found your way into this gang.
Sure. Okay, well, I started off with about 25 years of TradFi experience in hedge funds and private equity. And, I had been accumulating Bitcoin for, about, 8 or 9 years. I started in 2014. So long-time crypto fan. Around the time DeFi summer rolled around, I rotated most of my Bitcoin into Ethereum, and found myself playing in some of the same cryptos, like a lot of the Ohm forks and all of that craziness that happened in November of 2021. Rode that all the way down. Through those connections, I found myself interested in Convex. And then I got slowly, I used to watch a lot of your videos too, early on, Garrett, and then got curve pilled. And once I was curve pilled, I started realizing the power of the Curve and Convex ecosystem. And then slowly the rest of the protocols that slowly got added on, right? Like FX and Frax, obviously, big deal. And, Prisma. And so in about, I think October of 2023, last year, Aisha and I just decided, hey, maybe we could start a group, of like CVX maxis and, maybe help at least corral some of the voting, because it was so fragmented. There wasn't a lot of cohesion. Everybody was going all over the place to try and really talk to people about the upcoming votes. And so we thought it would be an interesting idea, and we started. And then I had recently just had a conversation with Jason, and he told me that he was a big CVX fan and he was a CVX maxi. And so naturally made sense for me at the early stages to include him. And then he included Boz. And then slowly, and then I found Con online on Twitter, and then, that was it. And so we started including other protocols into a separate group, and we now have a pretty large group of CVX like-minded people that are looking at votes on a daily basis, and that's it. So that's kind of how it happened. That's kind of the origin story. The name, I think Boz has more information about how the name happened, but I'll let Jason kind of give his intro.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's price related, right? As soon as Convex hits 6, you add another member.
It was something like that, or
Convex
exactly.
goes down to 4. One of you is out.
When it's 100, it's CVX 100.
Boz did not ask any of us what it was. He was making a post in the Frax governance forum. We saw the Flywheel guys make a post, and we got inspired. We're like, it's really cool that they're making a post in the Frax governance to get funding to do BD. And we like that idea. All of us have a lot of BD experience and a lot of interest in this too. And so Boz made a big post about how we should, get something and we can help out. And he just labeled it CVX-5, and we were like, okay. So yeah, I'm Jason. My background, I've spent 13 years at early stage startups. I'd always be like the first person you'd hire, or I would be the founder of the startup. worked in ad tech and gaming. I did a startup that Twitch acquired with the founder of Third Web, where I'm at now. And there's a guy who has a podcast named My First Million, Sean Purry. I worked with him. And yeah, and then I got into DeFi when, like, one day I was talking to Boz about, we were coming up with schemes to make money, doing like Shopify stores and paid newsletters. We're like, how do we create passive income? And Boz one day asked this like legendary question, my whole group of friends, which is like, Jason, you bought ETH like a few years ago. Like, what are you doing with it? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing with it? I'm holding it. And he's like, have you heard of DeFi? And this was right before DeFi summer happened. And so we were just clicking around all over Sushi, Maker. We found Curve. We felt like if you could figure out Curve in 2020, then like you can understand anything. And we were off to the races. And I've made about 20 angel investments around DeFi. I invested in Third Web. Now I lead their ecosystem team. So I work with all the different blockchains. Third Web supports over 1,000 EVM chains, and I kind of collaborate with all of them. And so I'm like kind of all over the place. I work with Boz at Four Moons, where he said we run validators, we advise protocols, we sub-advise for a hedge fund, and we allocate to DeFi. Convex is one of our positions in that fund. We're super pumped about like the liquidity returning, and look forward to getting more. Yeah, and like Crypto Investor said, I remember, as like I own a lot of CVX, and like I'm very interested in where this protocol is going, and I felt like there wasn't a space for like basically large bag holders who are very invested in what's happening to discuss like really high signal what's happening. And I also felt like there wasn't like a clear playbook on how to engage this flywheel. If you're a business, if you're a protocol and you should be using Curve and Convex, like, are you going to stumble across and randomly find these screenshots that Crypto Investor is posting, and K-Net's like his Substacks and Ox Chaos is like threads? Like, you're going to like piece it together. And we still feel like there's a missing component in DeFi in general, but like in this complicated flywheel that's so powerful, like there needs to be a playbook. And so what we've been doing is, it all started with us talking, and then like Crypto Investor said, other protocol founders joined our group as large bag holders who are interested in kind of figuring out how they should be operating. A lot of people started sharing ideas, and it turns out what we learned from like talking to all these founders, we know more than we thought we knew about like how you should approach this stuff. And we started kind of doing free consulting, and we would jump on calls with everybody, and we would like lay out like, how should you be buying Convex? Should you be incentivizing? How much? How do you launch gauges? Whipping votes for like smart, for pools that should exist. And it's just kind of like snowballed, and we're down to talk to anybody and help them because we want to onboard. We want to grow this marketplace of participants on the Curve and Convex ecosystem.
Nice intros, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and kick the discussion off with a bit of a trip through history. So anyone who's not been around crypto for a long time might not be familiar, but once upon a time, age of CoinGecko. Then bear market things happened, and Curve has fallen down to 125th place. Convex is down all the way somehow at 200th place. Now, of course, nothing we say is financial advice. Get all the time. Which one, Curve or Convex? And I was always like, I pick a favorite child here. But we're with the 5 Convex maxis. So if you all are correct, then presumably this Convex and the two will again be neck and neck. In my estimation, like Convex has done probably more than to kind of shore up its position. So if anything, the case for Convex seems like it's stronger now than it was back in the day. But you all are the Convex maxis. Could you articulate the Convex maximalist case?
Who wants to go first for that?
I'll take a stab at it.
All right.
So there was a time when Convex was simply the booster of Curve, and they were extremely coupled. Like, before Convex even had an incentive marketplace, all we thought about Convex was, oh, if you're not a whale, if you're not a protocol and you're going to be an LP on Curve with stablecoins, you might as well be using Convex, because you're not going to be locking up every 4 years and paying all the gas and acquiring and doing all that. So it's like, it was better. And then as time went on, though, we saw the incentive marketplace come out. And so new revenue, the votes were getting rented every epoch. And then we started to see convex other protocols, if convex can be a verb. They took over Frax. They now have like 33% or whatever. Then they took over Prisma. Then they took over FX protocol. And like, there's more coming. Like, we all know, we're in the group chat, there are more coming. And then also what started to happen recently is there's been like a discourse around like, how do you value convex? It used to be, the conventional wisdom was, there was like this underlying NAV of like tokens that have been locked up in convex. But now the thinking is actually evolving to, the way you value convex is based on the emissions that it controls, because that's really what convex does. It controls emissions. And so the thesis for convex now is, we're going to see the value of those emissions that it controls increase as all those protocols that it controls also appreciate in value. And then also Convex's ownership of these will also increase. And so that's the thesis. Convex will continue to control more and more emissions that get more and more valuable. And that's where like the whole Berkshire Hathaway analogy came from.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And, I'll add, from a tokenomics perspective, I do echo the same sentiment. It basically, everybody seems to sort of associate Convex with Curve, but what they need to really think about is that Curve is just one of the protocols that Convex, has acquired. And so there's several other protocols there. And I agree with what Jason said. From a tokenomics perspective, if you look at it from a different way, there's a max cap of 100 million Convex. And we all know that all these other protocols that it's acquiring have, a pretty decent, healthy amount of emissions. So, from a tokenomics perspective, we obviously all prefer Convex. We're Convex maxis. The whole locking mechanism, a 16-week lock is certainly a lot more appealing to a protocol, especially if they're an early startup and they're trying to, figure out what they need to do for liquidity. So, from our perspective, or at least from my perspective, I think that Convex has a pretty huge future as it continues to acquire protocols down the road.
Crypto investor, I remember when I first met you, you had like this analogy of like Convex and how it has this finite supply and its emissions are declining, yet it continues to accumulate more governance tokens. Like, it was like a golf. What was it?
Yeah, I tweeted it about. It's one of my first tweets is about this kind of golf ball analogy where, if you had like a container, like one of those 5-gallon jugs, and you kept putting emissions into it, and it kept going, there's only so much space in that jug. There's only ever going to be X number of Convex tokens. And so, but as those golf balls become baseballs, what happens to the jug? It just explodes. And so those golf balls are all of the different emissions from the different protocols, and they're all about to, I think I saw your video, Garrett, a couple of days ago on Flywheel, they're all about to rip. And then, what is that valuation going to look like when, and I think I did some numbers about the emission control. And I think it's like $1.38, I think, per CVX that it controls per year. So, it basically controls about $80 million worth of emissions per year. So think of it like this: Convex controls $80 million of emissions, that go to these various different curve pools. So how do you value that? I mean, if you had a company that could control where $80 million goes in a year, how much would you sell it for? Would you sell it for $300 million, or would you sell it for $1 billion? Or would it be $10 billion?
Yeah, exactly.
It just depends on the value of these emissions. And so right now we feel it's highly, highly undervalued if you look at the numbers from that perspective.
Which is just a sea change as well, too. Yeah. I mean, we do. I think the interesting thing is just that Convex has started to evolve past just being like a curve wrapper at this point,
Right.
and it's now becoming like the social layer on top of all of these different DeFi protocols that kind of brings them all together, and it's like the one ring that binds them, right?
You know what's an interesting concept too is the fact that I think early on Convex was seen as sort of like a bad actor, or like it was sort of like a violent takeover of Curve. But now what we're seeing is it's the opposite. We're seeing protocols that are like, when do we become CVX? You know, when can we do this? Like when are we CVX-XXX or whatever the token name might be? You know, so I notice there's a different sentiment around CVX. People now protocols are seeing Convex as their form of controlling emissions and controlling inflation, and so it's a much different narrative now than it was, say, a year ago or two ago.
Yeah, and like that chart that Garrett just brought up, like that's the emission schedule for Convex, and we're actually pretty far out on the top of the S curve now, based on how much Curve has been captured by Convex. Like something that's super interesting about Convex that like made me excited about it early on is that what sets it apart from other emission schedules out there, and I wish more people copied this, is it's a performance-based token emission schedule. Convex doesn't get emitted unless Curve gets locked up. And so, well, like not 100% of it, but like the majority of it. And so it only emits when it wins. And as you get to the top, it's like you can see like we're running out of Convex to put out there. And yet it's still gobbling up a lot of emissions. And so for that golf ball analogy, like I would love to, I'm sure there's a dashboard out there. If it doesn't exist, I would love to see what does Convex control? You know, it's controlling so many protocols and it's just going to keep on growing. One Convex token will be backed by so many more tokens. And I don't know, that's just mind-boggling to think about, because all the progress that all these protocols make, like FX protocol, they're just getting started. What's their market cap? It's very low. Like they have huge ambitions and a lot coming up. Those FXN tokens are going to be worth a lot, and Convex has a lot, and they're going to be directing those emissions. So I think it's going to there's going to be a wild repricing of how people look at Convex when they all connect the dots. And like that's why we're out here trying to explain this to everybody.
The problem is, I think we lose the information asymmetry. Like we know, and if most people don't know, that gives us an advantage, right?
We don't want to be early anymore.
He's been early
Sam,
enough.
What were you saying?
Well, I was saying that like I think that we finally shed off all of like the Terra Luna debt, right? Because I think there was this kind of misunderstanding with Curve Convex ecosystem that, you know, all of the bribes that were taking place, because for a long time you could come into the Convex ecosystem and you could bid $1 worth of whatever you have and get more than you get like $5 back worth of emissions, and that kind of collapsed after the Luna collapse, and we went through a 2-year bear period, and we're finally back to a place where, you know, the emissions are extremely efficient. And we actually had a question from the audience that I think you guys can take, where can you explore the topic of vote efficiency as compared to capital efficiency? There are more complications with trying to earn yield from voting or vote rental. It can be expensive to vote. And that comes from Brian Bray.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that we wrestle with, you know, almost every day, because when we talk to protocols, you know, a lot of them ask us, the first initial reaction is to incentivize, and you know, that could be a very good strategy if it's a very short-term strategy and you need to build liquidity for the short run, like a few months or whatever. But over the long term, from a price perspective and also from a tokenomics perspective, it makes sense to have locked CVX for a protocol to continue, especially if they plan on being around for the next 5 years, so that they can just continually vote for their pool. I mean, obviously, Frax is the pioneer of that, and you know, they have had a major head start in that area, which is why I think a lot of people think that they've probably won those wars already. And so, Yeah, I mean, we look at those numbers every day. We advise, we talk to protocols. It's not a secret. We've been helping Trident Digital with the PYUSD incentives, and we watch those numbers very closely to make sure that whatever they're incentivizing, they're getting an efficiency out of it. You don't want to overspend on the emissions. On the Curve side, it's definitely a lot more competitive. But with FXN and FXN coming online in the next round, I don't know if that's alpha or not, if that's been announced, but next Vodium round, FXN emissions will be live. And with Prisma emissions now being much more efficient, we've been advising protocols to pair up with these pools, connect, and try to drive volume and TVL to their corresponding stablecoins.
Yeah. On top of that, in that group that we created, there's been like a whole number of people that really geek out on doing dashboards and Excel and doing like crunching the numbers. And there's a member of the group, so we've spun off like an R&D group, and this guy Shizgo did some research on like what's the trade-off of incentivizing versus owning CVX, and we basically concluded that if you intend to kind of stick around for 5 years, then you should like bake that into your assumption, and maybe you should just instead buy as much Convex as you possibly can, and instead of incentivizing it all, buy Convex and own your votes for the long term. Because I don't know, if you're a business, if you're going to be a business, usually you plan on being around for more than 5 years. So like right now, that would be like the move. If you're still figuring things out or whatever, incentivizing is very efficient, but the brave should just go buy, 100K Convex, and it's like buying. It's like, I know that my startup is going to do sales, so I'm going to go get a Salesforce subscription, or I'm going to go get an AWS. It's like that level of infrastructure.
So I feel like people are fairly familiar with Curve and Frax at this point, but a lot of the kind of bull case for Convex is the protocols that it chooses to kind of sprinkle its convex dust over. So it made big investments, for example, in like conquering Prisma, conquering protocol F of X. Ones people have been. I'd be curious to hear your take on like how Convex chose some of these protocols, and for people who aren't familiar with some of these newer protocols, like, what was some of the calculus as to like what Convex might have been thinking when choosing to kind of like move into those ecosystems, and like why are like those particularly bullish in your opinion?
I guess there's like a framework for how there isn't like a direct answer here. It's more of just a framework for decision making. At least the way I understand it, and crypto investor and Jason, please add to your thoughts or correct me if I'm wrong. But the general framework that we understand, at least at where we sit, which is, again, we're community members and CVX maxis. There isn't a direct way, but to understand this, but it's really understanding like what the emissions are for a particular protocol. Is the team willing to work with the Convex devs, Winnie and C2? How much contribution can they get out of them? Are they collaborative enough so that some of the designs can actually fit closely with Convex as it relates to complementary roadmaps and strategies? Are there enough emissions to be accrued to Convex to actually make it valuable for all parties involved and all the users? Can they fit the products into each other? So again, it's a complementary play, and the most recent version of that we see with FX protocol, and create deeper synergies beyond just an integration. Another key component of this decision-making framework, as we understand it from Convex, is, does the protocol actually, is it positioned well enough to begin generating revenues, and how much revenues can it actually generate? What's the actual market? What's the strategy? What's the tactics in bringing value to the ecosystem overall? And then the last bit is more like, is there general interest in the product? So these are high-level frameworks that we try to understand a little bit more, especially as we're kind of like in the trenches of talking with all these protocols. Some of them request like, hey, we'd love to be integrated with Convex. We're like, well, we don't make the decision. We don't even know what the decision is and how it's made, but we definitely know that the framework that I just shared contributes to when and how those decisions are made. Hopefully that makes sense and like sheds light on how the Convex devs actually approach who to work with and the why behind it.
Well, we actually have
here.
Oh yeah, we just want to take a pause and say that Bitcoin's hitting all-time highs. It's about to break through 70,000.
No way. Seriously?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God, what time?
Good stuff. Hey.
This is the party. This is the
Hey,
party.
we're about to witness history, guys.
Well, maybe we'll get one of those like
It's because we were here.
yeah.
We're witnessing it together.
And
Oh
it's
my
nuking.
God. Oh my God.
Now we're nuking again.
I am looking.
It's all over.
It's all
Great timing.
It's
Man,
my
inside
fault
the
for
party.
joining in, so I'll step back out. We'll go back.
Nice,
to all-time highs.
K-Mets.
Hey,
Thanks
hey
for
buddy, how you doing?
Yeah, we have a late joiner here. We have K-Mets, who is here. Maybe K-Mets, you can talk about, like, you're one of the newest additions to the Convex ecosystem with FFX protocol. Maybe you can talk about the thought process of why you guys wanted to be a part of Convex and what went into actually rolling that out and making it an integral part of FFX.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on, guys. And I've been talking with the CVX-5 guys for quite a while now. In fact, Boz and CryptoVestor and I we rang in the new year, the three of us together, as I gave them a crash course in Clever and how Clever worked. So that was a fun way to bring in 2024.
How we roll.
But yeah, as far as FX coming into Convex, so AladdinDAO, essentially its products with Concentrator and Clever have always been centered around Convex, and Concentrator is essentially the prime place-to-place liquidity for Convex for folks that have LPs and want to basically just accrue CVX CRV from that's auto compounding, or have other things like AFXS, which is CVX FXS. So Concentrator has been a fabulous product that's built on top of Convex, and also to a degree now StakeDAO as well. But Clever as well, which is basically sort of the other side of the coin for Convex, which is the vote incentives, and it basically offers non-liquidating leverage on those vote incentives. And so it's an absolutely fabulous protocol. It's one of my favorites in DeFi, just because I'm a CVX maximalist at heart as well. And so once you start diving into these mechanisms, you begin to realize that AladdinDAO has deeply ingrained itself within the Convex finance ecosystem, and really made itself pretty well known to everybody in Convex. And so so we've always kind of been on the radar of Convex and the devs and the folks over there at Convex. And so when we released FX, the Convex folks were like, hey, this is actually like pretty cool. Like, you guys came up with this FETH token here, this stable coin that's not pegged to $1, but also kind of like has a little bit of price exposure, because Convex itself, and really every DAO in the ecosystem, sort of had like this wake up moment when USDC went, had their depeg to 88 cents, and we were all like, oh my God, what do we do? And so FX really jumped at that opportunity and came up with that. And so the CVX folks were like, we really think that you guys have come up with something that's really incredible here, pretty cool. And I'm obviously putting words in their mouth right now, but I can do that because we're part of Convex now. So, but obviously, we have just some really cool features with FETH and XETH, and now with FXUSD, which is going to obviously take FX to a whole nother level in the entire AladdinDAO ecosystem. I mean, these guys at this point may as well call themselves ALD5 for Aladdin as well, and as also with CVX-5, because they're just such fabulous integrators with the Aladdin ecosystem as well, and have really been wonderful advocates for everything that we've done at FX and Aladdin on the whole, and Clever and Concentrator. So really been fabulous to work with these guys. They're probably, like, I would say, 5 of the sharpest people in DeFi that I've ever met. Very intelligent, all of them. I mean, for Boz and CryptoVestor to get a grasp on Clever in 2 days was pretty magnificent, because it is not an easy product to wrap your brain around, and all the possibilities. But kudos to them that they've really embraced it and gone for it.
I built a Excel model just to give it, and we can share this, guys, as well, like after the stream. But I basically built an Excel model with historical reference for people that just use Vodium relative to what you can actually achieve in terms of return with Clever. And that was by epoch, based on like the average, value for VLCVX. And it was alarmingly attractive in a good way. And we can definitely make that Excel like more open source, and I can just continually update it. But that's when the light popped off of, like, Clever is extremely powerful. What other products does AladdinDAO actually possess? That led us to FX Protocol, and FX Protocol was just like a magical moment for all of us.
So we actually have a new guest as well too. We got Justin from Asymmetry. Welcome to the stream, sir, with the Llama Party.
GM guys, it is good to be here. See some familiar faces and a couple new ones as well.
We love Justin.
What's up, Justin?
Yeah, it's okay, man.
Hey pal, how you doing?
So we actually wanted to touch on Asymmetry because it has been just rolling out the gate, and Asymmetry kind of takes a new stance on how yield can be generated by mixing LSDs with VLCVX to generate ETH yield, and it is one of the newest entrants into the Convex ecosystem. So Justin, maybe you can walk us through the ideas around like your thoughts on how to work with Convex and how to build with them, and what you're looking forward to with Asymmetry.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thanks for having me on. It's good to see you guys, and the support from CVX-5 and the Llama Party has been immense as we've kind of rolled out Asym's first hybrid liquid staking product, also kind of a structured product, AF ETH. And so we really wanted to bring a way for users to get access to, of course, liquid staking. It's so powerful, but really kind of tap into this Curve and Convex ecosystem that, in my opinion, is the strongest flywheel within DeFi, within crypto at the moment, combined with Frax. And so in partnership with all these guys, basically, the first ever hybrid LST structured product. Yeah, you can see the amount of Convex that is vote locked within the AF ETH contract there on the screen. I think it's just over 100,000 CVX now. And we'll open up more caps very, very soon. We'll drop some partnership news as well coming up. And then, keep rolling it out basically to lock more CVX and keep it running essentially. But it's been a good ride. And right now we just did our harvest last week. 10.02% APY is the official number for what we're running at right now, which is cool to see, still in double digits. And I think there's a lot of upside as Convex starts to run as well too.
Very cool. So how's that been working with the CVX-5 rolling out Asymmetry?
These guys are awesome. I think you know that, but the support has been immense. It was cool to, when we initially get to talk to people who really understand what AF ETH is and why it matters. And the kind of big piece around that is some people that I've talked to don't really understand what Convex is or what the flywheel is and what the llamas are. And that's not the case here. Within this community, everyone understands what AF ETH is, why it matters, the kind of pressure that it will put on CVX and locking it. And, these guys are awesome. You see their Twitter presence, and I think I'll hint it. We'll be working very closely, continually in the future as well, to ensure good participation on governance as well as maximum yield for all users.
So I wanted to ask you kind of an open question for everybody, and that's that everything that Convex has done has been centered around Ethereum DeFi protocols so far. Obviously, it has voting power that it can use to incentivize curve pools and other pools on L2s, but we haven't seen any introduction of any L2 native protocols yet. Is this the next evolution for Convex to start taking in projects that are on like Arbitrum or Optimism or any other L2? And like, is there any like future evolution where there can be incentivization for like modular rollup stacks?
I think the answer is probably yes.
I saw you, Jason. It's that like who's the it's not Pep, it's the other football coach. It's like, if I say something, I'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Obviously, everybody here knows that the Convex devs are relatively quiet group, and it's hard to even figure out what their next move is going to be. So, we're speculating here, but I would argue that it's certainly a possibility. Although I can't say that I've had any confirmation from them to that effect. But if I had to guess, I would say in the next 12 months or 2 years, I think we definitely will see that happening at some level.
Yeah. Because like for Convex to win, it kind of has to be like us, like Leviathan has to keep absorbing new projects. Yeah. Exactly. And the more projects that it brings into its ecosystem, the bigger it becomes, the more emissions that it controls. And, the more powerful it becomes in the long run, which is what we all want.
That's a really good point, Sam. Like, what happens if a project launches that hits the framework that Boz mentioned earlier, aligned with Curve? They're going to be launching pools. They're going to be producing revenue. They have VE tokenomics, but they launch like on a Berachain or somewhere else. Like, I don't know what they're going to do, but like, I feel like, they're entrepreneurs. They're going to go chase demand, I would imagine. So we'll see. It's unknown. I mean, and Garrett, on your last interview with the Flywheel podcast, like you talked about how Curve has had an increased focus on L2s recently. So I don't know. Maybe
with gas prices above 100, like I have to go to L2s. I don't know about all of you guys.
Yeah.
One other thing too, to your previous question, Convex is looking for protocols that can integrate really well with other protocols. For example, with FX, they can integrate Frax-E. They same thing with Prisma. They can, if there's another protocol like Frax in there, they want to make sure that those tokens are being utilized and that there's synergies between the different protocols. And they're obviously looking for emissions. They want to control emissions. And they have the last one with Prisma, they basically were able to do this lock drop, which I think I was probably one of the first people to even notice it. And they've used that strategy to acquire a huge amount of Prisma tokens. And I am pretty certain there's going to be some kind of lockup for Fraxel with the FXS being the locked rewards being claimed that way. So that's another strategy. So I think they're looking for those types of strategies to be able to acquire as much of the protocol's emissions and gain governance control. That's the playbook for Convex. And as these protocols mature and become more powerful, then Convex becomes more powerful. So that's the way to look at it. And I think that's where that Berkshire Hathaway, that Boz coined came from, that whole concept. As for AF ETH, Justin and I spoke a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was really interesting when I saw the numbers and I saw the strategy, the 70% Frax-E, 30% CVX. I was obviously very excited. I saw a huge potential. anybody that locks up CVX is a protocol that we love, and we think that there's a huge future for Asymmetry. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Appreciate you, Crypto Bester. I think too, we talked about it before, but the Prisma playbook is super powerful. I make no promises, but it certainly has not gone unnoticed in our camp of Prisma playbook, KMETs, you know, the Protocol FX playbook. You guys are crushing. And frankly, we're big believers in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so if someone is executing at a very high level, then maybe they're giving you a hint on how you should execute as well. So definitely taking notice. And yeah, Convex flywheel all the way around.
So I'd like to ask you all.
Thanks for having me. I'll be on next time.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
Appreciate
See you,
it.
Justin.
I'll see you.
So I wanted to ask you all, this is like an open question for the community. A lot of you have like institutional or traditional finance backgrounds, and now of course you've kind of like gone full DeFi pilled. We know that like their last bull run, it's just that they made the mistakes of kind of putting it in these like quasi C DeFi services that just gave it to Sam Bankman-Fried to run away with. What's your thoughts though on this market? Like, do you think that the institutions are going to be like earlier than retail to find their way back to crypto, or are they already here? And if so, like, what's their appetite for things like Convex, you know, asymmetry finance, some of the products that like might be more palatable to institutional investors?
I definitely think that there's a difference in this market than there was in last market. This feels a lot more mature to me. The stuff that's being built now is a lot different than what we saw in the last cycle. Institutions are coming in a big way. That's definitely true with the ETFs and all of that interest. But again, like, you know, looking at the different protocols, you know, looking at things like FX and Prisma, even Asymmetry, there's just the things that they're building, the Legos that are being put together here. We didn't see that in the last cycle. That didn't, you know, I mean, the stablecoin wars, I mean, we didn't see, I mean, we sort of saw that, like it was sort of like reaching a crescendo there with Luna and you know, Frax, you know, wanting to make that 4 pool, and then everything just collapsed from there. But I think this time we're going to have a much more extended run with the stable coins, and you know, I think it's the future is definitely bright for this cycle from my perspective. But I think Boz probably has a little bit of different. I mean, you know, he went to ETH Denver. He had a little bit more, you know, insight as to what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe he could touch on that.
So the question, and let me reframe it, is what's happening due to the institutional interest coming into the space? Is that a better way of reframing the question? Yeah. I think my thesis, I guess, around what I saw at ETH Denver, a bunch of people we were talking to, like we hosted an event with 50, you know, protocols showed up at different times, or 50 people, and protocol leads, VCs, legal market makers, just given our network. And I guess the consensus, or at least my personal takeaway, is that it is great that there is institutional interest. The ETF has been a catalyst in legitimizing the space, and we're obviously seeing historic inflows of capital into the space. But to me, that is, I mean, that's not even the prologue to the beginning of what we're going to be witnessing here. Keep in mind, there's only, you know, 12 ETFs, right? We haven't even talked about Bitcoin derivatives integrating into the market. We haven't even talked about global institutional players actually integrating and legalizing Bitcoin in their jurisdiction, in their respective jurisdictions. We haven't even seen the ETH ETF get approved yet, and the ETH derivatives actually taking the market by storm. We haven't looked at, or we haven't even seen, like, the integrations into traditional financial products where 401ks and pension funds actually allow themselves to include Bitcoin and ETH, and like what that actually means for all the tokens and the projects downstream. So, you know, these all-time highs, whether it's Bitcoin, I know ETH just hit its, you know, high that hasn't seen in about 3 years or so. You know, it's too early to even fathom what this looks like in a few years. And the reason I say that is because the capital markets globally is $100 trillion market, right? Crypto markets today are about what, 2.5 trillion? So we're talking about a 50x TAM from where we are. And between financial products, derivatives, and everything, you know, for like main life and all the main products that can integrate into this ecosystem, you know, it's extremely bullish. Like, and we're still very, very early.
And you didn't even mention the stablecoin growth as well.
So I want to touch on stablecoins because there's a lot of, I guess, different frameworks. And Jason and Chaos were ones that kind of think about this in a completely different way. And Jason can actually talk about it a little way more intelligently than I can. But the way I think about like stable coins, and there are a lot of stable coins, by the way. Here's alpha. There's a lot of stable coins that are in the pipeline. Some people know about them. Some people haven't ever heard about them, but think of them as enterprise level stable coins that will be coming to the market that will make stable coin wars go intergalactic. So extremely bullish for Convex, extremely bullish for Curve.
Yeah, we're talking, I mean, stablecoin market cap is 143 billion. We're talking.
I mean, that's cute relative to I think it's going. That's cute.
That's smaller. That's smaller than some like family office hedge funds, right?
Yeah, like, we're going to see things that are coming into market that make PayPal look small.
Like if we ended 2025.
What a sentence, Bill.
Yeah,
I PayPal look small.
I fully agree. Like if we ended like 20, let's see, we're in 2024 now. So maybe like 3 years from now, 2026, 2027, like if we're at like 10 trillion, $20 trillion of stable coins at that point, I'm not even going to bat an eye. Like it's the amount of stable coins that have entered the system is just a drop in the hat. And it's, you know,
let me tell you,
we're at the point, like this is the moment where Bitcoin was at $1,000 for stable coins, right? We're going to see some explosive growth over the next few years that will just shock everyone. And
not to get too distracted, I will share something. There's a project in the Middle East, specifically Dubai, that's a 4x megalith project. They move about $2 trillion a year in volume. They're launching a crypto derivatives exchange. They have a license in commodities and securities on the main side of the business, and they're one of the first crypto derivatives license coming out of Dubai. And they have single sign-on where institutional accounts can actually access the crypto derivative side. So, you know, what this really means is like, imagine buying Apple with Bitcoin, like directly from one account. That's all coming to market soon. They also partnered with Arbitrum to launch an L2. That'll be announced like later. There's another quick little alpha. But you can see like there is so much capital and so much opportunity for real businesses to integrate in the space. And Alani in the chat actually, you know, put this perfectly. Like the way I look at all-time highs they're nothing more than a distraction for what's to come. It is just a simple milestone, but the levels of integration and the go-to-market strategies for all the mainstream businesses out there is you will need to adapt or you will be left behind. That's not me saying it. It's at the end of the day, it's the market forces are going to be the ultimate judge. And if you don't adapt, you're going to be left behind. And a key point on that, who's the CEO of that fund or that institution? Was it Van Eck or is it Vanguard CEO that just stepped down because they decided to, it was a Vanguard, yeah. They decided to not pursue Bitcoin. And, you know, within 2-3 weeks, it was the most disastrous business decision of all time. It's
Yeah.
going to be a case study forever.
Such a good point. Man. Such a good point.
Yeah, you decided to not go with the market, and the market bet against you, and you lost your job. Like that has.
Not only that, man, you lost so many people so much money when you actually think about it.
Yeah, you.
That's why they sent him home, because like, come on,
Well,
man,
he's
not do that.
Yeah, he was literally didn't make it. So
McDonald's.
It's so surreal.
Oh my God, that's so
Now
funny.
when we're thinking about, like, again, when we're thinking about top tier institutional players and everything that's downstream from them, right? Like we see what Jamie Dimon says, and then we look at what JP Morgan does, right? And then all the institutional partners, the family offices. We've talked to several family offices. I just came back from a family office summit in Beverly Hills, where people. When you talk about crypto, they kind of like, shrug. But when you talk about Bitcoin, they say, oh yeah, the family office we're working with, has allocation of 5 to 7% into this thing. They're, mainstream America family offices, they're beginning to lean into more of these products, which is going to further create demand for more products to actually be created. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. I think we're very, very early. I think a lot of times people tend to say that crypto's in the 95 or 90, it's 94 in crypto. I think right now, given the institutional capital and the ETF approval, along with the political forces, helping us and being the tailwinds for all the people on our side, winning in courts. I think we're in like the 97, 98 portion of where digital assets are. So we're going to see massive growth and massive opportunities over the next 3 to 4 years.
I'll sort of tag on to that and say, like, another perspective that I think a lot of people can relate to here. And like, I'm seeing this play out with people that I met a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. One of my favorite statements that the Bankless guy said is like, the most bullish thing for ETH is to be understood. And the way that you end up learning about a lot of this is it starts with crypto's complicated, doesn't make sense. What does it do? Then you own some, and then you have exposure, and that exposure creates an energy inside of you to pay attention and learn more. And the thing that we see, and we see this with JP Morgan, even, and like their analysts spinning up and like talking about a lot of things. And when you meet them, like, they know everything about DeFi, they cover it, they're obsessed with it. The best thing for DeFi is that it's been around. The playground has been built. One of the coolest things to go live through was DeFi summer and watching all these primitives launch, and you saw the roadmaps, and things were launching, V2s were coming out, other experiments were blowing up, and we're starting to now actually understand, like, what does this DeFi city look like? How does it work? How does money flow into it when macro conditions change? And like, what do you use it for? And like, what's the difference between real yield and like this fake emission yield? And so now that we have a better understanding of it, there's something to reflect on and build a thesis around in terms of like, where are we going to park our money long term? And is it going to do what we think it's going to do? And that's now the case. And so there's now something more to understand. And to go, Baz, I'll let you in a second. People that I met that at like family office conferences 2 years ago that were like, oh my God, crypto, but this guy got me a little bit bullish on it, I'm gonna go buy some ETH. I've caught up with them recently, and like, they're doing stuff in crypto now. They're LPing, they're voting on things, they're taking incentives for their votes. Like, they're going down the journey of themselves. They have the energy. And so I can't help but think that's going to happen.
Can I mention just one thing? I know I didn't really touch on stablecoins, and Jason, please take this. One of the ways that Jason helped me frame, like, when we think about rewards points, Starbucks rewards, airline rewards, these rewards actually sit on the liability portions of books for these organizations. Reward points have a dollar denominated value, and rewards long term will be converted into like enterprise. You think of them as enterprise level stable coins. These stable coins will have their programmable dollars at the end of the day, but they are going to be used for growth for organization, retention for organization, and there's going to be more novel things that organizations can do relative to the reward points. So that analogy, Jason can actually talk a little bit more about. But when we're talking about stable coins and what's happening, these branded stable coins, any company that has a major point system will, in theory, evolve into deploying a stable coin in the market.
To tag on, you'll see that like Visa just came out with a platform for creating basically this kind of ERC20 loyalty points program, a branded program. Third Web has, where I work, we're a developer tool. We have a loyalty sort of bundle for creating these things. And when we talk to brands, it's what the current pain point that they all have is the interoperability of their existing points. They have like this software. It's hard to onboard new merchants and add utility to their points. What happens when you have tons of Delta Sky Miles points and like you can't sell them easily? Like there's like third-party marketplaces that are like not, against the rules. And so what brands love is they love the idea of having an interoperable point that, anybody could just be like, yeah, that works here. It adds more value to being a part of their ecosystem. And, when we talk to PayPal, like what their vision is they would love to be the routing pair between all of these. That's like one of their ambitions. And so it's like, I don't know, like they're a good example of someone that like went down the rabbit hole and now they have a guy who is now like, incentivizing liquidity on their pairs and smearing their coin all around DeFi. Like PayPal's not the first. They're not the only really clever people. Other companies are going to do this.
I think I saw sorry, Garrett. I saw a statistic somewhere that per employee that Tether, US Tether, is like the most profitable company in the world per employee. And once you hear that and you realize what business they're in, you basically just say people are going to come flocking towards it, right? Like, I mean, stable coins are just that business. And then if you have sort of like the United States government basically running the deficits they have and are printing the amount of US Treasury bills, it just, and especially at the interest rates that they are, this is another sort of opportunity that people are looking at as well. So I think, like you guys are saying, it's just the floodgates are opening, or at least, that's what I keep telling myself. So I'm excited to see it come true.
I've also touched on the thesis of like how also merchant processors will all adapt stable coins. So whether it's Western Union, Stripes, it's already happening. That thesis is posted on my Twitter.
Can you share some examples? Can you share some examples of this happening already?
I 2024, end of 2024 or 2025, I would be shocked if you couldn't use a Visa credit card to just buy stuff and like load it up with stable coins. That was
wow.
So the framework, think about it, is, and I don't want to hijack this a little more, so just give me like 30 seconds.
Go for it. Hijack it anyway.
Yeah. So when you think about merchant processing, it's really a race to the bottom, right? And it's a very extractive business. It's disgusting what they actually do. They charge small, SMBs 2.9% plus whatever the 10, 20, 30 cent is based on volume. That's like literally their business model. Full stop. Right. When you think about PayPal, they have about 34 million merchants set up in America. Every single one of those accepts in some way, shape, or form their PayPal portal that allows the online customers of that particular merchant, to come in, pay online. And every single one of those transactions has a percentage of the value of the total transaction, plus, the 10, 20, 30%, whatever. and that's usually actually charged to the business. It's very rarely passed on to the customer. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Either way, it's extractive and doesn't really add value. Like, why do you need 2.9% plus another 30% fee to kind of suck out of like your revenue? But if you actually have a stable coin, the transactions are instantaneously settled. It's also cheaper to transact using a stable coin as opposed to this old technology. I mean, it's kind of like relating, like you could use a steam engine or you could use Tesla. Like, yes, this infrastructure exists for payment processing, but the new world requires stable coins. And when you think about what I mentioned earlier, stable coins are programmable reward points that obviously drive retention. PayPal's entire model for PYUSD, at least from my perspective, is designed to begin shifting their SMB business and in the payment transaction business to go from processing to stable coins. Their SMB network is going to accept PYUSD. Why? Well, because it's better, faster, cheaper, settles instantaneously, and you can actually have those merchants reward their customers with, you know, novel things. Like if you use PYUSD, we'll give you like 1% off, 3% off, 5% off, which incentivizes utility and around their stable coins, which again drives and fosters more adoption in the real world, drives more adoption and utility in the DeFi space. And now you have this like mini flywheel for PYUSD occurring that allows PayPal to outcompete some of their competitors, right? Why would you have an SMB in front of you and you have like two pitches. Pitch one is like, hey, we have another merchant processing terminal, and it's 2.9% plus 5 cents. PayPal comes in and says, that's cool. We have that as well. So now you're comparing apples to apples, but we'll also give you a stable coin functionality that allows you to save on those costs and allows you to reward your customers should you want to use that stable coin. And you could program it from your portal. To me, that's like a stronger value proposition of what else could I do as opposed to like, how much lower can I go?
One of the biggest conversations that Boz and I and Adam, who's in the chat at Ace to Book at 4 Moons, is like when we're creating our portfolio for DeFi for the hedge fund we advise, we ask like, how do you get exposure to this narrative that we have a thesis around? Like, we believe stablecoins will be big. We believe that the EVM, we will like smart contract applications will be big. What is the right way to get exposure to it? We'll believe gaming on chain will be big. What do you buy? And so like a question to everybody out there is like, what is a good way to get exposure to this stablecoin narrative? Maybe it's you buy Maker. For us, the reason why we're Curve Maxis and Convex Maxis is we see these two entities at the center of the stablecoin universe on chain, and we feel like that will ride the stablecoin narrative. Like as stablecoins grow, so too must Curve and Convex.
So we got a few questions rolling in from our viewers on YouTube and X. Big shout out to X, by the way. We're getting almost 900 viewers there. Let's see if we can retweet, get this over 1,000.
Wow.
And if you're on X, by the way, check the Leviathan news profiles. Follow all of our links there. We are on Spotify. We have breaking headlines to our Telegram channel. But the question they wanted to ask was from Reg Domain. Bring it back to Convex. If this is a governance play, then why aren't you heavily invested in Clev? Because you're fully invested and locked in VLCVX/VECRV question. And then they mentioned something about the golf ball analogy.
Can I take a stab at it real quick? If that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. So Clev is it just depends, right, on sort of like what your goals are with your CVX, right? If you're seeking yield, pure yield, and you want to lever it up, then of course you would invest in Clev. Now, when you have VE Clev, there is a ton of governance power there, correct? Yes, but it does not have any effect on the biweekly gauge votes. And so for a lot of protocols, that is their main concern. for other things such as like whitelisting or for approval of gauge votes, then it's an incredibly powerful tool. So it just really just kind of depends on sort of your situation and what you want to use Clev for. Clev is going to be a very valuable protocol in the future for all these reasons that we've talked about today, for these stable coins that are coming on board. But having just straight vote lock Convex, that gives you optionality because of the time period, the 4-month time period, the 16-week lock. It gives you the ability to keep it more liquid. With VE Clev, you don't have that as much. So there's just a lot of ways to look at it and approach it. And so, obviously, the CVX-5 can, kind of speak to what they, look at it as. But that's sort of like the way that I've always sort of viewed Clever and VE Clev. And so, it's just depending on sort of like how you're wanting to use your CVX. Is it a yield play or is it a governance play? And it can be both. It just depends.
I wrapped my head around Clever, and after I vote locked all my tokens for 16 weeks, and like I was like, wow, like that, what a great way to own vote locked Convex if you're gonna own it for like a year or two, because the yields that you earn on it is significantly more doing that LP strategy that you described. I can't just say it. It's a little elaborate, but yeah, that's why. Bullish.
Yeah, and also, I do agree. I think that Clever is a very powerful protocol, and I think that as time passes, you're going to see a lot of other protocols and institutions trying to acquire CVX more cheaply by using Clever. We've already seen talks of that. It just like Himets was saying, it depends on what you're looking for. If liquidity is also an issue, and voting power is also an issue. So it just depends on the flavor. But we obviously are big fans of Clever. We're big fans of Concentrator and obviously FX. So all Aladdin products, benefit from CVX one way or another.
Any thoughts on Reg's comment that CVX governance is completely undervalued and why that might be?
It goes down to why we are doing the CVX-5 group. We strongly believe that there is a gap in it's all across DeFi, but Curve and Convex in particular. These things take a lot of effort to understand. It's not all in one place. There's not like one playbook where you can drop your inputs and see what the outputs are, where you can understand like how a protocol works technically, but translating that to a business story is, I think, difficult. And that's why so many people are threading, and as you start to learn that business story on how this software can be used, and how you protocol own liquidity and how you get rebates, from the votes, like it's complicated, and you can't ELI 5 this. And so I think the onboarding is harsh. I look at protocol founders trying to get in touch with the Convex teams to figure out like, how do I launch gauges? Like, how does incentives work? How do we get live on Vodium? And like, this is like to Boz's point, we're early, like, the user experience from like this is a B2B product, and the user experience for onboarding, like, there's no account managers. There's no demo call where like you go, wow, that's interesting. Thanks for the call, salesperson. We don't have that yet, and like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fill that gap as much as we can. And the market, you know how smart the market is. We're all redacted.
That's fine.
Look what happened to that guy from Vanguard. He wasn't redacted enough, I guess.
He was
honestly, it's weird to even think about it. But we actually made obviously a much better decision than the guy actually running Vanguard. And I don't know, it's surreal. This whole new rising bull market is I don't know because of the fact that this time I'm in contact with people like so many people within the space, and people like yourselves who represent the people who are actually coming from that other side of business, and to see this intersection actually starting to happen, it's mesmerizing. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm just watching it like I used to watch sports.
There's even, last thing I'll say on this is like, there's really boring things that are like not crypto cool that like everybody in DeFi doesn't do that they should do, like embedded wallets. Like this technology's out there. It will smooth the user experience and accelerate onboarding funnels for users. Some user learns about Convex or Curve that is not yet in crypto, but like they totally get it. They show up and like they should be able to log in with their Google account or their Apple ID, but like these things are out there. There's so many little things like that. And like, they're all going to add up. These things are compounded as each one gets adopted by the whole ecosystem.
That's a good point.
I would agree with that, Jason. Like you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like a lot of this stuff that we're talking about today, it's just very difficult to ELI5 it, right? I mean, it's just, we're doing the best we can, but you really have to have sort of a blend of not just financial aptitude, but also of computer aptitude and web aptitude, because for most people to be onboarded into DeFi, like to know what an RPC is just asking way too much of anybody, right?
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and so it's one thing to like to say, well, you just go in here and you click this and you buy this. I can remember when I first got into kind of DeFi, and I was like, okay, so where is the app that I go to buy Bitcoin? And there's no Bitcoin app. You have to go to Coinbase, and then you have to figure out how Coinbase works. And that's like step one of like 200 to get to, talking about the Convex flywheel, right? So, thank God for folks like the CVX-5 and for Garrett and, everybody that's doing their part to kind of like simplify this and clarify this, because God knows I've done my part to try and like talk about it to people that are deep in DeFi about these products. And they're like, man, I don't know what the hell you just said. I mean, it sounds cool, but yeah, I'm all for it. Whatever, man.
Isn't the big hope that like, these are all protocols, like they do have front ends, but like, isn't the grand hope that these all become the guts of the front ends of other apps, other fintech products and things like that? Like, I always like to say, when we're going around DeFi, it's like using a computer as it's getting built, and the computer isn't even done yet. And, that's why we're complaining about gas fees and the user experience. And it's because like, it's not done.
Yeah, true. It's a process in the making. And but it's such an exciting journey, you know what I mean? And I think that you really touched a very important point there, because there are so many steps to the process that once we figure out how to bypass, the consumer doesn't need to know all that. Like it's holding us back by the fact that, now you have to know what the wallet is, just like Kemet said, and then now you have to know what this is and that is, and come on, like the guy's bored. He just wants the token to own it the best way, and that's it. He doesn't want to know the whole process.
How well?
Advisor, one more thing, like and you're talking about how difficult it is for people to even just learn how to use a wallet or how to get on Coinbase or whatever. Imagine like when we're talking to protocols, and we're like, okay, you need to vote for this gauge, or you need to vote, here, or you need to execute this contract so that you harvest rewards, or go to this page here to withdraw your claim. I mean, it's just insane the amount of work. Institutions don't understand this, and so that's one of the reasons why we have this group, is to try and be a front-facing group that can get on calls, that can talk to people, can meet people at conferences, and try to bridge the gap between Curve and Convex and protocols and institutions. Because behind in the we're all people, we're all humans, we all have to deal with things. So that's the goal, and we're trying to simplify what is a very, very complex mechanism and very difficult for people to understand. I mean, people don't understand what boost is, they don't understand what gauges are, they don't know what any of this stuff is, and so that's the main point. That's what we're trying to achieve. And in the process, we're getting people interested in incentivizing pools. And, whether it be Vodium or other, vote incentive markets, that is the goal. And I think we're starting to gain some traction. And so I'll say, if anybody here knows a protocol or, an institution that needs help, we're here to try and help facilitate that. And we've been doing that for the past few months now.
Respect. And I think it's obvious that you're seeing a great job. You're doing a great job at it. Go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah, Boz, earlier in the call, you teased us that you're going to tell us a bit about your AI thesis. I think as we're kind of approaching an hour and a half into the Llama Party, it's a good time to move on to some fun topics like that.
Yeah. So, again, this is just an opinion, right? I think there's and this is kind of like a really well-balanced act, and because when we talk about narrative can apply to NFTs, Deepin projects, AI around that, DeFi, and what have you. But I think like what Deepin projects do really, really well relative to where we are, there's a really huge gap. And you can kind of take a look at like what Deepin projects are generating. Like if you're a value investor or if you're value investing, and then you take a look at a project, you want to take a look at users, revenue, growth, related back to, in some way, shape, or form, the market cap or the FTV of a particular project. I think what's happening in the traditional side, the mainstream side of the world, with OpenAI and the all-time highs, what Sam is doing, raising the multi-trillion-dollar thing to just like disrupt data centers and create new chips to compete with NVIDIA. That's all great. Relative to the value being generated and the revenues being generated deep in projects and the FDV. I mean, there's some projects out there that are generating $20,000-$30,000 a month, maybe. Their FDV is growing to 2 to 3 million. I just can't see how that justifies their FDVs. Whereas, like, we're talking about Curve, we're talking about Convex, we're talking about specific use cases. We see the numbers, we see the growth, we see the incentives, the emissions. To me, that's like clearer to construct a narrative around what's happening in the space. So when we think about institutional capitals and inflows coming into the ecosystem, think about like where the money is going to flow first. It's going to flow to projects that have product market fit, and the market that has the most product market fit, generally speaking, is DeFi. It's not AI. It's not Deepin. It's DeFi. That's where the users are. That's where the activity is. That's where the volumes are. That's where the fees being generated are. It's not Deepin projects. Deepin, if you are speculating, but if you're value investing, it's going to be DeFi. Full stop. So that's like the gap I view the world through the lens are. And I think like there's a lot of projects that are doing incredibly well. Like Akash has a phenomenal product, and they're growing. They're bringing on GPUs. I think IONET is another project. They're providing GPU network on Solana. They raised, our friends are there as well. But relative to the value that those protocols can generate, like where's the money going to flow with all this activity coming in? Well, it's going to come to DEXs. It's going to come to governance. It's going to be all around DeFi, perpetual traders, and like all the innovations that are happening there. It's going to come to lending protocols. It's not going to flow to Deepin first. It's going to like that. That's like a speculative asset class relative to where like value being generated is. So to me, like DeFi has higher upside because institutional capital is smart money, and they're going to look at they're going to look at these projects from a value investing lens perspective relative to speculative first. That's not to say that they won't speculate, but they will look at DeFi first to invest in first. And the capital markets around that is, again, $100 trillion. Like cloud and AI is several hundred billion, but 700 billion relative to $100 trillion market cap is completely different. We're not talking about the same universe when it comes to total addressable market here. So from my lens, capital markets, DeFi has higher upside than Deepin projects. Full stop.
You also talked about the origin of the name CVX-5.
Oh, so yeah, when we were talking about the Frax governance proposal, Aisha helped draft this amazing proposal, and I went in and just added to it to create like a full spec of like what we want to propose as a BD unit. And this was just organically, it was flowing, it was organically growing. But I come from, I was talking to Jason, we're part of the 4 moons. I'm like, oh, there's 4 moons here. There's a group of CVX-5 people here. Let's just come up with CVX-5. And it was a joke. But people were like, oh, that's really cool. But nobody said anything bad about it. And we needed to publish this proposal in the Frax governance forum. So I was like, okay, CVX-5. And all of a sudden, people picked up on it in a bunch of groups. Like, who's the CVX-5? I'm like, oh my gosh, what have we started here? But then that became kind of like a brand, and we stuck with it. But it was a combination of Aisha's proposal, the name, or the filler name that we had in there, and then we're like, oh, let's just put a CVX-5 in there and try and hand it back our CVX-5.
So you guys are stuck now. You're going to have to be like the Big Ten, and then you'll have like 12 teams and then 14 teams. And so now CVX-5 with like 22 people.
We're boxed in now.
It's so funny. What does CVX-5 become? Can there be a CVX-6? I have no idea. I yield that decision. But it's become a thing.
For sure.
It's a community aligned thing.
We definitely want to expand our reach. And so whether we change the name or when we add new members, that's certainly a possibility, of course. But beyond that, we want to have more, reach. So we want to have, marketing and research, divisions and things like that. So anybody that can help, we're always looking for people who can contribute and help our mission. So yeah, there's certainly, to answer your question, Garrett, there's certainly a possibility of a CVX-6. That's definitely not out of the question.
And to anyone out there, this group that we've mentioned over and over again that has all these protocol founders in it, if you have you can get into that group. If you have 100,000 Convex tokens or more, reach out to Boz, CryptoVestor, myself, and prove it, and we'll let you in, and you can join the conversation.
So just a funny side note, when you mentioned CVX-5 and the 5 of you, sort of a and I'm bringing up the website tvtropes.org. I don't know if you're familiar with this, where they actually say that it tends to be that in TV and movies, there's always a classic grouping of 5 people, and people embody certain roles within it. So the classic is that there's a leader, a foil to the leader, a complementary emotional support person, person who's the brains, and a person who's the brawn. So you don't need to answer online here, but think about that. If any of you are embodying some of these roles or something, and if you fit this, or if you're defying this trope.
Good stuff, Garrett.
That's definitely something to think about. Yeah, I mean, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and so we're very complementary in that way, for sure. Some people are just better, speaking, and doing podcasts and doing those types of things. And some people understand investor relations, and some people understand, the tokenomics aspect a little bit better. Aisha is really good about researching and finding certain nuances about Convex and Curve. So yeah, we've all been, very well connected, and it's been actually a very good experience.
I think we get a lot done because a bunch of us were experienced entrepreneurs. And so like, this is a hobby, but we're bringing like that mentality to it. We're not treating it like a startup, but we're treating it like work. And, but we get a lot of energy. It's like, for anybody out there who's ever really loved your job, this is kind of like that. We love doing this. We want to see Convex grow. We want them to get more partners. We want to see our tokens get more valuable through the onboarding of new incentives. Baz, like, didn't you run the numbers recently? Like, we've onboarded over, we've projected out like $3 million in committed incentives for the year, and, tens of thousands of Convex tokens purchased, through our conversations. We would love to keep growing.
So one of the pet projects that we're going to have with CVX-5, and again, this is, we want to be as transparent as possible, is like, how much value did CVX-5, which is in concert with the community, with the Leviathans of the world, with the KMS of the world, how much did we collectively contribute to the ecosystem in terms of direct incentives as it relates to the emissions generated from those incentives? And I think the narrative that we can build around like, what did we do to impact what, and how much did the needle move? And right now, I think, crypto investor, correct me if I'm wrong, it's at least 400,000 of direct incentives that has flown because of our onboarding efforts.
Based on the onboarding, that's what it's looking like, is about $440,000 additional was added to the voting protocol on a monthly basis as of right now.
And that's growing on a per EPOC basis.
That's amazing,
so
guys.
When you expand that, like, the market's growing up. We're talking to other new protocols coming online. The pre-existing ones that we have onboarded are increasing their incentives mechanisms. That's growing, so that flywheel is coming. So I think conservatively, we can look at 2 to 3 million in direct incentives that we have contributed to the ecosystem, and that's going to help move the needle overall for everybody.
I think the CVX price has already shown the needle is moving.
Yeah, it's definitely had a bit of a recovery for sure. And I can definitely add to that. I could say, beyond just protocols that are interested now, because I'm getting a lot of people, DMing me now and asking for help. There's a lot of wealthy investors out there that have their eyes out now on CVX and on the Curve ecosystem. And I can't share, obviously this is private, but I can definitely say that there's definite interest there from an investment standpoint. And so I think that there certainly is not enough CVX out there for everybody. There just isn't. As far as I know, there's about 1.2 million, I don't know what the latest number is, about 1.2 million CVX in the Curve pool. There might be 1 or 2 million on exchanges. Maybe there's a little more, but there's certainly not enough for all of the different projects to build liquidity.
There was 1.6 million available before Asymmetry got into the game, and a couple other whales peaked up and discovered Convex. It blows my mind that there's not like a flywheel fund out there. There's all sorts of high net worth individuals that just they will get this. They just need the story told to them. But they don't want to do the DeFi. They would happily give their money to a fund that just owns Convex and Curve and just wow, exposure to DeFi, and I get yield that. It blows people's minds.
Fund yet soon.
Yet.
So I'm curious.
That's the key. That's the key word right there, Garrett. Yet, because I am definitely.
So I'm curious
trying to do
if you all were in charge of Convex and you could kind of bring another protocol into the fold and you had your pick, which protocols would you be targeting?
Wow.
That's a great question.
Wow. Well, obviously it has to have the tokenomics as a base, but that's a tough one. Has to have a lot of emissions, has to be willing to work with the protocol, to be accepting of the fact that Convex wants a controlling portion of those tokens and that governance. So it's a tough call. And also, you have to understand that Convex has emissions, and they want to watch those emissions carefully, and they choose where to spend those emissions. Yes, there's lock drop and chain lock and all these different, strategies that they're using to acquire protocols. But in the end, they still need to support their pools. They still need to incentivize them, all of the different, liquid locker, versions. So, I think a lot, I don't think we realize it. It's not just like they pick willy-nilly. They're very, very strategic about which protocols they add, and also where they want to spend their emissions. I don't have a good answer for you right now as far as exactly which one. I know Napier was definitely on the radar. Can't confirm or deny whether that's going to happen. I just don't have enough information. But yeah, I think that's my take.
I don't know of a protocol that Convergence is coming to Convex poker jump. I don't. Well, I mean, they announced it, and the crypto investor, just follow him for all alpha.
Not from a protocol perspective, because I don't think they're going to be acquiring Convergence, but they are. Convergence is doing some type of integration with Convex that they announced this morning. So they're doing some kind of liquid locker version or something to that effect. It's a little unclear yet because there's not enough information. But as far as protocols that Convex is trying to acquire, they're very, very quiet about that. We only get insights as to what they might look at. And Napier has definitely been one of the ones that have really been mentioned the most. It wouldn't surprise me if this was one of them, but I certainly can't. There's no 100% guarantee there. But again, think about it. It's all about synergies, and it's all about VE tokenomics. It's about, from what I understand, this Napier uses the Prisma code base. So it would be a natural, fit. It also utilizes the top 3 LSD curve pools, and so that's a fit there with Frax-E. And so again, there might be some synergies there, and so that might make sense for Convex.
I will say, like, to your question, is there a protocol that stands out? Not off the top of my head, but this is kind of like a call to action, I guess. If there is a VE protocol happening on Solana or Mantle that would be beneficial to the Curve ecosystem and Convex, and there's a strong team, well-backed, experienced in DeFi, that wants to connect with us, DMs are open, and would love to support. Like, I'd love to see Convex penetrate the Mantle ecosystem. I'd love to see Convex expand in supporting VE projects that are growing on the Solana ecosystem, in addition to the roll-ups that are coming to market right now. So again, we don't know who those winners are, and we don't know those players, but in the event that you are one of them and listening, reach out to us and we'd love to learn more.
And if anybody from Eigen Layer is watching, redo your tokenomics and make it tokenomics. I would actually say skip Convex in one protocol and hire a growth engineer. Have someone that's focused on building everything that CVX-5 does manually over the phone into the product and with like growth loops.
I can speculate. We just had Justin on here a few minutes ago with Asymmetry. It certainly would be interesting. I'm not saying I don't know if it's going to happen, but if Asymmetry did a VE tokenomic system for their token that's going to be launching in a few months, I don't see why Convex would not want to control the governance of a protocol that is consuming large amounts of Convex like that. So that would be an interesting thought experiment there. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but if they are successful, and I do think the team is very, very eager, and I think there's definitely they're definitely going to have a lot of traction. If they are successful, then I can see something down the road. It's certainly a possibility, but that's speculation on my part.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's no longer a speculation long ago is about FXN. That's for sure.
Could I put you on the stakes on one of Convex's constituent protocols in Prisma? Specifically, there was a thread that went around a couple hours ago from a friend of Leviathan, Token Bryce, who was commenting on the differences between Liquidity and Prisma, and not favorably towards Prisma, basically commenting that Liquidity is much better at keeping peg, and in particular calling the governance of Prisma risky. One of the examples being cited is some of the collateral choices in S-Frax-E, and Sam, you might want to comment on this, being the Maximalist here. And this Oracle, he was arguing that it's unsuitable for collateral because of possible depegs, as well as not being a big of the newest LRT Prisma and any of these kind of any of the shade being thrown at Prisma.
Well, full disclosure, I invested in it. And so like my high level take is that what I like about Prisma is that it's a fork of Liquidity, which I think is a great protocol, but it supports more collateral that are on themes that like are major, like all ETH, like not all ETH, but like ETH is destined to be staked and staked ETH is destined to be restaked. And so like these are great collateral. And also I really like V tokenomics and I like convex governance of V tokenomics. And so those were the things that attracted me to the protocol. These levels of this level of detail of like, you know, this Oracle, that choice. Oh my God, like that'll get figured out. I don't think that like that's necessarily like that's not how I invest, like that level of detail, to be honest. I've also
I mean,
no, I'll just leave it at that.
I will say this, like, you know, I haven't had enough time to digest that post. I saw it briefly this morning before I jumped on the call. But I will say this, if I had to choose between C2 or Token Bryce, I know who I'm going with. I'll leave it at that.
We've talked about Liquidity before, and we just had Colin Platt on a couple of weeks back to talk about Liquidity V2. And I think that the general consensus is that Liquidity V1, very well designed. It's out there. It's a feat of on-chain engineering to be able to write code that is able to be deployed and never touched again. I will give them props for that. However, there are problems with Liquidity with how it is enabled or unable to raise interest rates to meet the price of loans right now for LUSD, and it's had a significant impact on their TVL over the past few months, year even. And that's where opportunities like Prisma are able to come in and able to deploy with LSDs, deploy with the ability to raise and lower rates on how many fees they collect. And yeah, I mean, here's like Liquidity works. It works great. It's going to work great forever. And it runs off of ETH. But you know, the redemption ratio is at 460%. So you're essentially taking you're putting in $6 worth of ETH to borrow $1 worth of LSD or LUSD right now. And so I just don't even think it's a question at the moment. Like the Liquidity guys know it's broken. That's why they're putting out V2.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think it's kind of like a false.
It's just not capital efficient at this point. And with the LRT and the LSD narrative and everybody migrating to that, it's outdated, and it's obviously why they're coming out with V2. As far as price goes, you know, I mean, I think he showed the price of Prisma in the post. I think that's a little misleading because you have to understand the way Convex and Prisma worked together on this and the whole locking mechanism. There's the rewards are issued in locked form, so the only way to get that unlocked is really by having it. Claiming it as CVX Prisma, and so that does apply. That does give a constant sell pressure to Prisma, which is kind of unorthodox. But as that kind of relieves over time, and the emissions are locked in, because this is sort of a bootstrapping phase for Prisma from that perspective, and CVX just keeps gobbling up and acquiring as much governance power over Prisma, then I think the kind of the aha moment will come in a few months' time when at that point, Convex will own 100 million Prisma, and we'll have complete control of the governance power. And then I think you'll see that bootstrapping phase kind of phase away, and then you'll see a natural price action there. It's just a little bit from what I know about that mechanism.
And Sam, you didn't take the bait on Frax, so I'll go ahead and bring up that earlier today, another friend of the show, DeFi, wrote this really good thread looking at the validator performance of S-Frax-E and found that it was like unparalleled, basically like almost no, right here, you can see this, missed or reorged blocks. Impressive stuff.
Yeah, if you look at the statistics, Frax-E has the pretty much highest performance when it comes to liquid staking for its validators. I think it's a little bit misleading because we had this happened a while back, but we talked that there's some weird incentives for validators, especially with people with larger stake, to wait as long as possible to include the blocks into the transactions for MEV. And so I don't really think that chart is that telling. Like you might almost make more money if you're late than if you're early all the time. Just because if you finalize the block as early as possible, which is what that chart shows, there might be a second worth of, or a couple of milliseconds worth of MEV that you might miss out on. Again, this is a whole topic for a different discussion. We had a Leviathan episode that we'll link in the show notes that talks about this. But yeah, I think that will change once Frax changes its model to Frax-E v2 and they allow solo stakers on, because you really can't control the quality of the validators at that point. But up until now, with the team running all the validators in their basement, it's done really well.
That's just incredible. That's
doing a good job in that basement, that's for sure.
Yeah, Sam's got a bunch of servers in his basement. It's so stupid. If he does have them in the basement, I don't know what kind of connection he has, because it's got to be phenomenal. He must be a whiz.
I run a Ethereum node at my house, and I'll say this: it's not an easy effort, but once you get it going, it just kind of goes, And if you don't screw around with it a whole lot, it's pretty bulletproof. And I don't have a powerful system. I'm running it on a little ARM computer. Orange Pi 5. So, it's just when you see charts like that, you just kind of go, "Oh, that's kind of cool," but you're never really quite sure what the data is. But obviously, stake Frax-E, it just keeps running, right? And it's doing well, and the team obviously knows what they're doing. So, it just speaks to that.
Yeah, and just to hijack the conversation, talk about Frax a little bit more, and Convex as well too. Frax with its new block space incentive system is going to allow Convex to essentially determine the boost for different contracts on the network. And I think this is, I kind of was leading in this question about an hour ago about the expansion or evolution of Convex to L2s and into a modular rollup system. Through Frax, Convex has this whole ability to determine incentive mechanisms for L2s, for L3s, for app chains that are settling on Frax. And, this might become one of the biggest drivers of revenue into the future as people are essentially driving incentives to Convex to get that boost on top of Fraxtal to get extra incentives for their app chain or L2 or whatever they're running.
So one more thing to get you guys to get some hot takes on. There's some really great numbers on this screen. First of all, 1,200 viewers, X. Great job. So let's keep that up. Let's see if we can get up to 12,000 soon. Retweet, share, do all that good stuff.
All these all-time
also,
highs.
Alanara.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Leviathan News all-time highs. Alanara, who also just quit quit Web2 job for Fulsted, that these numbers at CurveUSD are implying about 660K per revenue just for CurveUSD alone. And OXNGMI pointed out that the revenue last week was already at $1 million. So this is like the kind of biggest prize in Convex's basket. Any thoughts on CurveUSD and what where CurveUSD might be going?
There will be more collateral. There will be higher caps. Stablecoins are going to have more utility. CurveUSD is going to be the money of Llama Land. Like, there's all these things happening that just make this thing more likely to get bigger.
I think we need a clip of Jason doing that in front of Tetranode's video, like pounding a like podium and like waving. Yeah,
there will be more stable coins.
Yeah, exactly.
There will be more CurveUSD.
They're just going to leave the caps there.
But the revenues for Curve have been great this week. I saw Mitch posting the picture inside of the Curve discussion channel about how they're pushing over $1 million just for this week. It's pretty great to see Curve come back. Going back to 2022, my end of year predictions for how DeFi comes back was through Curve, like through Convex, right? Like without Curve and Convex, or it's essentially Convex at the end of the day, becoming great again, right? Like make Convex great again. You don't see a resurgence in DeFi. And Convex is the bellwether for how the entire DeFi ecosystem is running, and maybe like Aave as well too on the lending side. But now that we're starting to see resurgence again, both in Convex, Curve, Frax, everything, it's just a canary in the coal mine, warning us that something is afoot, and we're starting to see big interest coming back into the space again.
Yeah, and I think you also mentioned, Sam, like last year we were talking about it, how there would be more incentivizers, right, on these different platforms. And so that would kind of spark that, and we're starting to see that happen now, even with PYUSD and with some of these other protocols that are just now starting to start incentivizing again. So yeah, I think that that makes sense. And as far as your question about CurveUSD, Garrett, yeah, absolutely. I think that the liquidation mechanism is amazing. I think it's very novel. I don't know if everybody knows about it yet, but once the appetite for leverage really kicks in here, and as this bull market rages on, I think you're going to see a lot more supply for CRVUSD. And I know that it's probably going to be utilized in a lot more different places in DeFi. So and remember, we did not have this in the last cycle. We did not have CRVUSD in the last cycle, and we did not have that revenue source in the last cycle. So the idea that this whole thing is the death spiralers, or they're going to be in disbelief when they see this. And we keep talking about Solana being the most hated rally in all of crypto. I disagree. I think the most hated rally is probably going to be CRV's rally.
It's the first time we have code-based businesses actually active that people can actually invest in. And I think that the amount of people that actually know about this is so tiny. It's such a small circle, or a few circles of people that actually know about this stuff. It's insane.
I have to go.
So we're going to wrap up here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We have an amazing Telegram channel that you can join at Leviathan_.news. I know that probably a lot of you listeners are already members of that, but we post 24-hour headlines, first to market with a lot of stuff. We're covering the Curve Convex ecosystem in depth, and we have some of the best minds in the space. Leviathan is a conglomerate of people. There's a lot of people that are on the back end that are supporting Leviathan. We have over 200 people in kind of our working group, and a bunch of other editors as well too. Additionally, if you're out there and you want to join Leviathan, just reach out. We're always looking to take on more members, and exactly, it just comes down to, if you care about this space and you want to see it grow, and you're interested in providing news. Also, we're not going to talk about points, but maybe they exist. But I'll leave it with you, Garrett.
I just want to say a big thank you to Boz, CryptoVestor, and already lost the third, but But there are 5 members of CVX-5. Thank you all
Jason,
5 for everything you do. Jason will pour one out for you. As well as we couldn't have Khan and Aisha on the stream, unfortunately, but we do hope to, everyone follow them if you have not already. They're on Twitter. They're on, I'm assuming, on the Convex Discord all the time, all the Convex channels. Anything that the surviving 2 of 5 would like to shout out before we bounce?
I mean, obviously, I think I said it before, but if there's anybody that is watching that has questions about Curve or Convex, or is trying to manage their liquidity, or trying to get a pool or gauge a past, obviously, reach out to us. We try to help. We're trying to provide that service to the community. So that's what I think. Boz, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
If there's any leading projects that come across anybody's desk that wants to onboard with Curve or expand from Mantle, Solana, whatever, and want to participate in the ecosystem, please reach out to us. If there's institutional or enterprise projects, like a PayPal level team that wants to participate in the Curve ecosystem and begin distributing their novel stablecoin for whatever, based on their mandate or strategy, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. And yeah, please continue supporting the Convex ecosystem at large. Would love to help in however we can.
All right, you heard it here, Leviathan News. Catch you next time, Squiddos.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for hosting it.
It was a pleasure.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Kemet, as well. Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, take care, Kemet. See you in the